We are now going to add some collage work to our canvas. So in this case, we had a box that we covered with some paper mache, and it's completely covered. But you can just use a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be a box that looks like this. We're going to choose one shape, one geometric shape or freeform shape if you would like, and you're going to use that throughout your entire piece. I'm choosing a hexagon, and I have some tracers of hexagons, or you might need to create your own tracer. I'm going to hold my tracer down, and at this point, if I'm using a tracer that belongs to the classroom, I'm only going to trace it with pencil. So I have done that a couple of times here, and I'm going to be able to take a different medium, maybe markers, crayons, colored pencils, or in my case I'm using paint sticks, and just give that a little bit of color directly onto my background here. Now some of you might have some loose paper from the from the paper mache that we used earlier. If that's yours, you might not be able to do as much work with this background stuff. Like this part kind of came up. Maybe I can pull a little bit of that off. Oh yeah, that worked fine for me. So you might be able to do that a little bit, but we don't want to end up pulling off all of our background stuff, the paper mache. As you can see, I added a couple more things in the background, but now I'm going to start my collage work. Collage means that you're taking small pieces and you're gluing them together to make a composition. That is what we are doing right here. The composition is going to be only done with the same shape over and over. So I have these two tracers that I'm using, and we are going to use only hexagons on this piece. We have been making paper, so the paper that we have made is what's going to be cut out into the hexagons and then glued or pasted directly onto our canvas. All right, I've been working on cutting out some of my hexagons, and I have a bunch of little ones all ready for me to rock and roll. I also made some half hexagons, so I can put these together in my composition to make a whole. And then I took and also experimented with some different ways to make my hexagons, because that's the shape that I happen to have. Look at this. I'm also going to use this rectangle, and I cut out half of a hexagon. I'm going to be able to complete my hexagon by putting these like so. So I'm using this idea over and over. I'm going to then bring some of these hexagons right to my composition and glue them on. You are not only going to deal with the top of this surface, but also bringing these hexagons around to the side by maybe folding some of these pieces of paper and gluing it around the edges. As well as on the back, we might include some of our design on the back as well. So I'm going to go about that with gluing, and you have 3 different glue methods. One is white glue. Now if you're using white glue, what you're going to do is add a little bit around the edges. This glue here is in a slip container, so it doesn't have a cap. We're not going to pull the cap off. And if it's clogged, I have the Glue Unclogger 2000 for you to use. So we'll talk about that if you need it. I'm going to use my finger and smear to the edges because I want to make sure that this piece stays on my piece of paper really well, and smearing it out to the edges is going to help me do that. Then I'm going to go ahead and glue this piece on, holding it down for a few seconds to make sure that it's nice and secured. Another option that you can use is a glue sponge. Now the glue sponge is just that. It's a sponge that has some glue in it. So you can take your piece and place it down on top of here, just kind of letting your fingers dance on the top. It gets the perfect amount of glue on the back to bring over to your composition. So I'll take this and look at, I have a little bit that comes off over to the side here. I'm going to bring that around to the edge of my composition here. So that's nice and glued down. Another option that you will have is glue stick. Now when you're using a glue stick, please make sure that you just have the glue stick a little bit up on the top. You add it pretty generously, so quite a bit on the back here. And then once again, holding down. Now I tell my younger students, I don't want to see any floppies. Floppies are parts that come off. So I would say the same thing to you. Let's make sure that we get everything glued down nice and tight. Right now, this part is not gluing down nice and tight, so I'd have to go back and add a little bit of extra glue so that I can get it to stay. Holding it for a period of time is going to help out with that as well. When we're putting away the glue stick, make sure that you put the glue stick back down in its container with the cap on, put really nice and tight. I'm going to work on this for a few minutes and then we'll be back with our final steps of our composition. Okay, now I have my composition pretty much laid out and I'm going to add my extra. So my extra is going to be, in my case, this pattern that it's a vintage pattern that I'm going to put a couple of pieces on. But you're going to have your extras be something that you really enjoy, such as maybe hunting or swimming. You can get a magazine that has images of those things going on. So I just wanted to talk about how to make sure that you're cutting very carefully as you cut out your extras. This is a little bit harder than our shapes generally. So making sure that you're taking little snips off at a time and that you're moving the paper and not necessarily like trying to move your scissors the whole time you're moving your paper. So I even took part of that pattern and made it into a hexagon that I can add somewhere on here. I'm not sure where yet. And then I'm going to place my figures down. Like I said, yours might be maybe a deer or, something that relates to your interests, maybe a dirt bike. And I'm going to add a little bit of that white glue. I really like the white glue the best because it holds down so nice and firm. And I don't have a lot of floppies after using that. Place it down, trying to find some clean parts of my fingers to hold down the edges to make sure I don't have those floppies. I'll add my other figure on here. And then this last piece that I cut out, we'll make that happen someplace as well. And then on the back, I also have some design as well with a couple of my figures. So my composition is pretty much completed. I just have a couple of pieces to add on there.